21, beginning in verse 5. This is after Jesus was crucified and risen. Does that make sense? Okay. Then Jesus said to them, "Children, have you any food?" I find that first sentence there very interesting on two fronts. Number one, the very obvious thing is Jesus is concerned that our needs are met, our food needs. You ever heard anybody say, there's people that are so spiritually minded they're of no earthly good? It happens. Jesus talked a lot about I talked a little bit about Sunday, how we had these scribes and Pharisees. They wanted to tell everybody what to do and what not to do, but at the end of the day, they wasn't going to lift a hand to help anybody. So Jesus said to them, "Children, have you any food?" Do you get the concept of being a child of God? Or are we too arrogant or lofty for that? Are we too mature? Are we too intelligent? Are we too whatever to be called children and to receive it? I've been thinking a lot this week about exactly how little I know about the Lord and His doings. And how often I think of myself as a servant. But very, very seldom do I actually humble myself to think of myself as a little child in the eyes of God. Because to receive that, to be a child, means you realize there's nothing you can do outside of Him. Just like our natural children. Without parents, they're in big trouble. So I hope that we look to Jesus and we look to the Father as our Father. And that we come to Him as such, not in pride, not in arrogance, not thinking that we're anybody, but coming to Him. I always picture a child wrapping their arms around mama's legs. Or hiding behind dad. I'm not trying to be sexist here or anything, but maybe I am. I always tell the story how, I don't know if my mom remembers it or not, how when we were growing up and we went shopping and stuff, she didn't want to be the lady that shut down the store because she couldn't find her kid. My wife never learned that lesson. But we always had to have our hand in her back pocket. It was just how it was. You kept your hand in mom's back pocket. That way she always knew you were there. That was before we had leashes for the kids. Or tasers. Yeah. If you laugh, that's scary. Hey Lawrence, I'm sorry, buddy.
How do you think those Bailey boys?
I heard stories last night about them locking babysitters out of the house and stuff.
Just one.
I was a little bit. I couldn't decide whether to give Mark a high five or a. And then talked about how your mom, you guys had a babysitter that was in a wheelchair. That's not right. Hey, come watch my 3 boys. And then I asked Mark, he said, well, we rent our our teens. Joking. Maybe not.
She left Adam in the crib.
Huh?
She left Adam in a crib in our teens.
I'm not touching that. I'll never come back. And anyhow, I always had to have my hand in mom's pocket. I can remember one time, I believe it was at was it Kmart that was in Urbana? Was there a Kmart in Urbana?
Yes.
The old plaza, right? Well, Kmart's the one that had the fish, right? Kmart had the fish. And for a young person, those fish was it. You wanted to go look at the fish. I can remember one time, I either had to have my hand in mom's pocket or I had to have a hold of her purse, which was attached to her shoulder. So anyhow, I can remember one time I was attached to mom's purse and we were walking close to the fish and I let go. And I went over and looked at the fish because they were shiny and bright and we didn't have fish. And anyhow, I was just there for not very long. And I can remember looking at the fish and walking back to where mom was. And I grabbed a hold of the purse. See where this is going, right? And then I felt her walking and I was walking alongside of her. And I kept looking at the fish until the fish were out of sight. And then I turned around and looked up, and it was not mom. Sweet.
How old were you?
10. 12. I wasn't as old as the Bailey boys have no babysitter in a wheelchair. But anyhow, I can remember looking up and that lady, she knew what was going on. She just, this is not, threw me off, I looked up, mom, it was not mom, it was an older black lady. And that really, not against black people, just threw me off, I'm like, whoa, that's not mom. And she just smiled at me and I smiled at her and let go and I found mom and she was watching the whole thing. Yeah. But children, it was all fun and games till I realized I lost mom. And some of us have been playing those games, from time to time. We get sidetracked. Let me tell you this. The Lord is watching. And once you figure out you got a hold of the wrong purse, he'll be right where you left him. People say to me all the time, I'm not hearing from the Lord, I don't know where he's at, and I say to them, well, where did you leave him? Because he's right there waiting for you. Where did you leave him? What's the last thing he told you? I got a nephew. Not anything goes here. He gets separation anxiety, something fearful. I mean, bad separation anxiety from. And sometimes he'll be around helping his dad, and I'll be milking or whatever, and he'll come and say, "Hey, where's my dad? I can't find Dad. Where is he? Where'd you leave him? Such and such a place. Is that where he told you to stay? Yeah. Well, stay there. He'll come back for you. Some of us think he's abandoned you, but if he's really your father and you're really his child, no. No. Mom didn't yank her purse out of my hands. I let go of it. And she waited. And I learned a lesson. A big lesson. Let's see, if I was 12, 35 years later, I'm still talking about it. You get what I'm saying? You're kind of slow, Teddy.
I'm laughing at your mom.
You get what I'm saying? To be childlike, it's okay to rely on the Lord. It's not something to be ashamed of. No, it's when somebody asks you to do something, well, let me check out with Dad and see what he says about it. You get what I'm saying? Like a child. And you want to know something else? Children make a whole bunch of mistakes. That any parent knows you can't expect a child to be perfect. God doesn't expect you to be perfect. He expects you to learn and grow. Think about all the times in my life that I have to learn lessons, you know. I prayed, it's probably a bad prayer. Lord, I only want to have to learn it once. I don't want to have to learn it twice. Next verse. And he said to them, cast the net on the right side of the boat and you will find some. They were out fishing. So they cast and now they were not able to draw it in because of the multitude of fish. This ties into that last verse where I was talking about learning, because the first time Jesus encountered some of his disciples, they were fishing. And they weren't catching nothing. And he said, throw it out again. And they said, we've been fishing all night. But if you say so, okay. This time they didn't question him, did they? You think they learned something? That's called maturity. That's called growing. That's called cast your net on the right side of the boat. How many of us just keep throwing our net on the left side of the boat? So they cast, and now they were not able to draw it in. That's a bunch of fish. See, when the Lord steps into the situation, when Dad steps into the situation, it's got to be all you can handle. But it's got to be a good all you can handle. When you're doing it on your own, Dad, it's got to be more than you can handle in a bad way. The Lord steps in the situation. It'll tax you, and it'll be heavy, but it's going to be good. I hope you're not one of the people who would be complaining, oh great, now I can't drag it in. Why bother? There are people like that. Can't handle success. Keep having to talk to my wife all the time about that. How you feeling today? Okay right now. Shut up. Because when you're saying right now, you're saying, no, I don't expect to later. How are things going? Okay right now. Okay. Just make sure you leave the door open for failure and disappointment. I do the same. I have things like that in my life. How's working, Mom? Almost caught up. Stop talking like that and be thankful for all you were able to get done. You were able to actually do something today. How's that go? Don't hope on anything and then you won't get let down. The Bible says the opposite. It says hope does not disappoint. Next verse. Therefore, the disciple who Jesus loved, the disciple who Jesus loved is the man who wrote this book. Now, you guys have heard me tell it hundreds of times. It's okay to call yourself the one Jesus loves. You're not lying. Tell the story about how I try to pound that into people because it's important, I think. Because everybody wants to be loved, right? I was talking to someone the other day and how important I'm finding out to call people brother and sister. Because I've learned firsthand that's very important to people. Because it's a connection, right, Debbie? It says something, that you mean something. And it's okay to say, I'm loved. You're loved. Whether you like it or not. Whether you receive it or not. Whether you understand it or not. Whether you care or not. You're loved. How many of us raising children look at someone and say, if they had any clue how much I love them, if they had any idea, our relationship would be so much different. It's no different than your father. Even if you realize he loves you, if you had any clue, your relationship would be so much different. I got in trouble this morning. Huh? No, not there. My wife, we were greeting this morning, and she walked up for me, and I thought she was coming in for a hug, and she was coming in for a kiss. And I went beside, and she landed it on my cheek. And she goes, "Alrighty then." And I tried to explain to her, I thought you were coming in for a hug. If I didn't know you were giving me a kiss, trust me. I don't let those pass by. See, often the Lord's coming in for a kiss. And all we're wanting is a hug. Kisses are better, right, Mary? Yeah. You get what I'm saying? You don't get what I'm saying? We'll talk about that later. We might have some counseling to do. I'm not going to kiss her, but I'm going to explain to her. I'm not going to hug her either. But man, the Lord's coming in for a kiss. Don't turn your cheek. Because if he's anything like my wife, you get what I'm saying? Therefore that disciple whom Jesus loved said to Peter, "It's the Lord!" Exclamation point. Now when Simon Peter heard that that it was the Lord. He put on his outer garment. Now, he put on his outer garment, for he had removed it, and he plunged it. This Peter's a weird dude. Anybody in here getting ready to jump into the sea would take their outer garment off, right? Not Peter. He puts it on. Because he can't do anything easy. So any of you that dance to the beat of a different drummer, take comfort. I see about 50 people in here that dance to the beat of a different drummer. People are driving me nuts. I'm joking. So he heard there was a Lord, and he put his outer garment on. And I've tried to find the spiritual significance in that. I can't find it. I think it's just a Peter's strange and take comfort in knowing there's other strange people. That's the only thing I can figure out. And I'll say that. Hey, God made you unique. He made you weird. There's a pretty good chance you are a strange cat. As long as you keep that weirdness inside those boundaries, embrace it. Embrace it. He plunged into the sea. Notice, prior to this, when he was in a boat and he saw Jesus, he walked on water until he sank. He was so excited and he just dived in. Next verse. But the other disciples came in the little boat, for they were not far from land, about 250 cubits. 250 cubits is about 350 feet, right? A cubit's a foot and a half, is that right? 200 times a foot and a half times 1.5 is 300, not 350. 300 feet from shore, that's not very far. So said the other disciples, again, Peter's the one who walked on water. Peter's the one that put his outer garment on. Peter's the one that dived in the sea. Peter wasn't the one that first realized it was Jesus, but when he got word it was Jesus, he was going where Jesus was. So that tells me too, you don't have to be the first to know, but once you know, get in that water. Next verse. Then as soon as they had come to land, they saw a fire of coals there, and fish laid on it, and bread. Okay. Because Jesus can do anything, right? For those of you that are trying to figure out how he's going to work out whatever you got going on, and you're spinning through your head how A plus B has to equal C, and the linear thought to get to that point of fixed. I want to remind you this. Jesus doesn't need anything to create something. He doesn't need anything to fix it. He is not bound by time. He is not bound by matter. He is not bound by anything that binds us. So if you feel hopeless, that's just you. That ain't him. There is a story in the Bible where he stopped the sun for his children. S-U-N, not S-O-N. He stopped the sun. And it stood still in the sky till the battle was over. Think about that in a couple minutes. He empowered a man named Samson with his spirit. He tore off the gates of a city and and carried him up to a hill. You serve the same God if you serve God. This same Samson killed 1,000 enemies of the Lord's people with the jawbone of a donkey. This same Samson caught 300 foxes, tied them, their tails together. I probably go back to the Bailey Boys again on that one. Tied their tails together, lit a torch on fire, and this is a pretty cool story, isn't it? He caught 300 foxes, tied their tails together 2 by 2, lit a torch in between the tails, let them loose, and they ran through the wheat fields and burned them down. The enemies of the Lord. This was the same, the same God also that Jonah was running the other direction. He said he prepared a giant fish to swallow him. Big fish. You say, yep, that's me. I'm swallowed by a fish right now. Well, let me tell you this. You read that book of Jonah, when he humbled himself and accepted the correction, that whale vomited him back out on dry land. And God said, let's go. Don't think you're any different. That you're a lost cause, that you're done. It just might take a few days. So he saw a fire of coals there and fish laid on it and bread. And they're probably thinking, what the heck? If you already had breakfast made for us, what are we? Just because I wanted to show you who I am. Next verse. Jesus said to them, bring some of the fish which you have just caught. And when I read that verse, I'm thinking, I've given you some ability. I want you to add to what I'm already doing. I'm the foundation. I want you to add to it. If you don't have a foundation, you can't add to it, right? So that's where this all starts. You start with the foundation, and the Lord lets you add to it. What do you add to it? Your good works. What are good works? Love your neighbor as yourself. No other gods before you. Love the God your Lord with all your heart, all your mind, all your soul, all your strength, all your everything. Remember the widows and the orphans. Feed him who is hungry. Turn the other cheek. We all agreement with that? Am I telling you anything that's not true? I heard a preacher talking this week, and it really got me thinking. He said, the church has raised up a whole bunch of Christians that just don't know Jesus very well. And I've been thinking about that all week. Even in myself, I'm trying to learn myself. I'm thinking, do I know Jesus? The author and perfecter of my salvation, the one I claim is that my foundation, the one I claim my rock, the one I claim that's going to be waiting there on Judgment Day to let me into the forever. Do I really know him? Can I show everybody him through my life? Have I been patient? Have I been kind? Have I helped the brokenhearted? I have to ask myself all these things. Do I know him? You have to ask yourself the same thing. Do you know him? To know him is to not only learn about him, but to be close. I've said it in the past, let me say it this way. Who can I pick on? It's gotta be a couple. Okay, we'll go Stephen and Susan. I want to call you Sharon. Stephen, Susan. I know Susan. But he knows Susan. There's a whole bunch of that going on out there with the Lord. We think we know him. Anybody that's ever been married? Eli and Karen? Dude, we spoke to marriage counseling earlier. We're supposed to start here in about half an hour. Eli, you think you know her? You don't know her. Trust me. Kara, same way. You two are in for some surprises.
I already know that.
No, you don't. You do not. That scares me that he thinks he does. Yeah. Oh, kids. Every person in here has been married more than 30 seconds are like, dude, you don't know. But it's going to be beautiful. Right? Okay, yeah. Because there's degrees. Dive in. Don't be satisfied with just the Jesus you read about. There's a Jesus that you talk to. And then beyond that, there's a Jesus that talks to you. Oh, yeah. That's a whole different level of intimacy. There's the Jesus that when you're worshiping, you're thinking in the back of your mind, I hope you're receiving this because I'm giving it to you. Next verse. Simon Peter went up and dragged the net to land full of large fish, 153. And although there were so many, the net was not broken. Now, first off, I want to say, many of us have heard this preached, that 153, that's a very significant number, right? It's been told that 153 is the known kingdoms in the world at that time. I'm not discrediting that, but I'm not saying that's true. But that 153, it wouldn't have said 153 if that wasn't significant. I lean to believe that has something to do with people, whether it be nations or I've researched that and I can't get a very clear answer on exactly, people groups or nations or whatever, but there's something significant about them catching 153 fish. Because whenever the scripture gives you a number, it means something. Next verse. And Jesus said to them, "Come and eat breakfast." Yet none of the disciples dared to ask him, "Who are you?" They spent enough time with him, they knew who he was. They didn't have to ask. This is the third time he'd seen him after his resurrection. Okay, now I just spent 40 minutes preaching. I'm ready to get into the hook now. Next verse. Then Jesus came and took the bread and he gave it to them, and likewise the fish. You picture that? The Lord serving them. He didn't say, okay, I got it right now, feed me. He didn't say, feed me. Let me serve you. And I think, how dare I have any kind of loftiness in me at all when he served others. Next verse. This is now the third time Jesus showed himself to his disciples after he was raised from the dead. Next verse. So when they had eaten breakfast, Jesus said to Simon, remember, this is the guy that put his coat on before he jumped into the sea. Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me more than these? Simon, I want you to look around. Your best friends, do you love me more than them? And that's an honest question. He's asking you that today. That includes everybody. Mamas, your kids, daddies, your wives, do you love Jesus more than they? Do you love him more than the precious? Do you love him more than yourself? Do you love him more than your pride? Do you love him more than your selfishness? Do you love him more than your time? Do you love him more? No, it's not always just people. Do you love him more than your money? A lot of these things are easy to say, but the application's a different story. He said to him, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. You know that I love you. I'm the one that jumped in the sea and come to get to you as soon as I realized it was you. I'm the one that pulled out the sword and cut off the dude's ear. I'm the one that denied you 3 times. But yet here I am. Because I realized the error of my ways. You know that I love you. He said to him, feed my lambs. Lord's been taking me on a spiritual journey these past couple of months with lambs. It's more spiritual than I ever realized. What can I say about lambs? They're very athletic. No, I've got one that's the ugliest creature you've ever seen in your life. I should have to put it up. It looks like Yoda.
So cute.
No, it's ugly. But anyhow, precious. It's not even that, brother. It's not even precious. This thing, oh.
They're stupid. They have to wander off.
Yeah. Hey, here's what happens. Let me tell you some things I've learned this week. Okay? We've got these lambs that are about 5 weeks old or so. They are growing fast and they're rambunctious and healthy. And see, sheep generally are very particular about who they let nurse off of them. If you ain't theirs, you ain't getting anything. Well, we got this one ewe, female sheep that had our very youngest lamb. And she will let anything nurse off of her. So the very youngest, smallest, this is the ugly one. Whenever it goes to get a drink, the tap's dry. And it's trying, it's game, but there ain't nothing there. So what it learned is that what I do is when Mike feeds them and they're all up there eating, I steal. But it still wasn't getting enough. So me and Isaac, we decided, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're just going to take it and just feed it a bottle so it don't die, because it was gradually starving to death because Mama couldn't feed it. You think that thing would take a bottle? Nope. You stick it in its mouth and it just, so you try to make it nurse, and it's got milk running out the side of its face, and we're like, we're trying to help you. You're starving to death. I don't care. Stick it in its mouth, it won't nurse. You squeeze the bottle, trying to squirt it down, and all it does is cough it back up. That we ain't a whole lot different. Many of us, as far as the world goes, we're starving to death. And the Lord is trying to feed us things, and we rebel. So we say, we read this and we bring it on ourselves because he's talking to us also, and he's saying, feed my lambs. And we're like, all right, we'll feed them. Let me tell you, that ain't fun. And it ain't easy. And you don't know how many times I want to take that lamb by its little neck and throw it up against a freaking wall. I haven't, but I want to. And let me tell you, if you're feeding his sheep, and let me tell you, you're no different. So don't think you're above it. For every person you want to wring their neck, somebody wants to wring yours. Maybe 3 or 4 people. Because that's the way we are. So when he says, feed my sheep, we're thinking, oh yeah, we'll take care of them. It ain't easy. It ain't for the faint of hearted. And let me tell you this. You're one of his lambs. Somebody's trying to feed you. Probably the Lord let them. There's nothing worse than sitting there and somebody trying to give you milk and there's milk running down because you ain't sucking. No, I'd rather starve to death. To the point where it's gotten nurse. Next verse. I got all these people, I'll come over and feed bottles. You have no clue. And he said to him again a second time, son of Jonah, do you love me? And Peter's probably starting to think, yes, Lord, you know I love you. I just told you that. He said to him, tend my sheep. Tend is the root of tender. Tend my sheep. Feed my lambs. Tend my sheep. Next verse. He said to him a third time, Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me? Peter was grieved because he said to him a third time, do you love me? Let me tell you this. By this time in Peter's journey, he learned that 3 was a pretty significant number. 2 or 3 years before that, he wouldn't have got it. He gets it now. I can say it this way, for example. Peter denied Jesus 3 times. I think he's given him a chance 3 times to be restored. There's nothing worse than forgiveness to be denied. There's nothing more beautiful than forgiveness to be declared or accepted. When he does this, he's like telling Peter, that's behind us. Lesson learned. Peter was grieved because he told him the 3rd time, do you love me? And he said to him, Lord, you know all things. You know that I loved you. Jesus said to him, feed my sheep. And you notice how Jesus didn't go in all these long dissertation on how to do these things, right? He just said, do it. It's not that complicated. If you stick to the golden rules of Christianity, love and patience and all that, it's not that difficult, well, to know what to do. You got to know we're dealing with flawed people just as we're flawed. Every one of us is flawed in some areas. Next verse. Most assuredly, I say to you, when you were younger, you girded yourself and walked where you wished. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands, and another will gird you and carry you where you do not wish to go. That's comforting, isn't it? Next verse. He spoke this, signifying by what death he would glorify God. And when he had spoken this, he said to him, follow me. So he was telling him right there, Peter, you're going to die the death of crucifixion. And he was crucified upside down. Do you know why he was crucified upside down? Who, what, where, when, what? He wasn't worthy of dying the same way Jesus died. You want me to tell you something else? All he had to do was deny Christ. You know what happened right before he was crucified upside down? They did the same thing to his wife. Can you imagine? All you have to do is deny, and both you and your wife live. It wouldn't do it. And some of us are going through that struggle now. All I have to do is walk away from this, and then certain things in my life are going to get better. Can we be real? Can we be real? Do you know how much less stress would be in my life if I walked away from my calling? I'm not alone in here with that. It's a burden. And to agree, everyone in here, who wants to move Pam on Saturday? You don't count, remember, Seth? Nothing you say counts. Good one, yeah. But we do it because we're called to, because we love her. You get what I'm saying? We're saying all I got to do is just forget it. And then a lot of that goes away. No. Just got to work through it. And let me tell you this. And this is deeper than you even realize. spiritual. If you want grace and mercy and forgiveness and love and compassion and all that, you better start dishing it out. You better start dishing it out. And let me tell you this, too. If you're getting rocks thrown at you, just keep them. Eventually they'll run out. You think you're just taking a beating? You gain nothing by throwing them rocks back. Because it just don't stop. It just don't stop. I had someone tell me, it's all about mentality and what you hear. Somebody told me that was stationed in the Middle East for a while. Talked about their mentality. He was in the military. He said close to their military base there was 2 cement factories. One, they were real close to each other, just basically on the other side of the road, and they were competing cement factories. He said in the United States, what you would do is you try to improve and streamline and make a better product and everything to try to get a leg up on the competition, right? You know what they did? They just set roadside bombs to blow up each other's trucks and this, that, and the other. He said it's maddening because it never ends. It's just, instead of trying to kill your enemy, do better than them. What do you gain by blowing them up? Do you think that pleases the Lord? It does not. Because that person you're at odds with, he loves more than you can even comprehend, as he loves you more than you can comprehend. Follow me. He said, well, I lost track. He's right where you left him. He's right where you left him. Next verse. Then Peter turned around. He saw the disciple who Jesus loved following, who also leaned on his breast at the supper and said, Lord, who was the one that betrayed you? Oh my goodness. So he's looking at John. Peter just had all this said to him, and what's he trying to do? He's trying to deflect. He looks at John and says, so Lord, who's the one who betrays you? Really? Let me tell you. You keep your relationship between you and him. You know, I talk a lot about my wife and I make fun of her, and it always comes back to me and I get in trouble. But when it comes to her and I's relationship, personal, you'll never know. Because that's between her and I. When she's mad at me, I don't say, hey, but what about Seth? No, son. It's me and you. You get what I'm saying? You don't be looking around. Definitely don't be saying, well, they made me do it. That don't work. Well, it was my whatever. I had a bad day. I lost my job. My kid was disrespectful. Whatever. I didn't have my coffee. My husband's a jerk. Because that's what he's going to say. What about him? What about him? For Verse 21. Peter, seeing him, said to Jesus, "But Lord, what about this man? I don't like this personal stuff. Let's deal with John's issues. I don't want to deal with mine. Let's deal with John." Next verse. Jesus said to him, "If I will that he remain till I come, what is that to you? You follow me." John and I got a relationship, and you and I got a relationship. Let's worry about our. How many of us spend so much time looking around? Looking around. And we're tripping over our own feet. I guarantee you, everyone in here has got some issues they need to worry about. You don't need to worry about someone else's. How do you change the world? Change you. That's how you change the world. How do you feed his sheep? You get so close to him that you get what I'm saying? Do you? Well, that person did this to me and they did that, and they're not. Jesus don't care. When I say don't care, I mean what you think about that situation. You do you and change the world. I'm cutting out. Uh-oh. You do you and change the world. I think we got a couple more verses. Let's see. No, let's back up. I'm going to stop at 22. He said to them, "If I will that he remain till I come, what is that to you? You follow me." I want this verse burned into our noggins. If we follow this verse, it solves a whole lot of issues. A whole lot of issues. And I've told you how to follow him. Stick your hand in his back pocket and don't let go. And if you do get separated sometime by some shiny object, which you will, he's still watching you, waiting right where you left him, right, Mary? So have hope in that, have confidence in that, and take comfort in that. And you say, "Pastor Mike, how? I haven't even found him yet." The fact that you're here is he's watching, and he's beckoning, and he's just waiting for you to cry out and ask for him. And we have confidence that if you cry out for him, right, he will answer you. Let's pray. Father, I thank you for today. I hope today was significant. I think it was to me. I see growth. I see growth, Father. And for all those that are thinking, Lord, that, man, if I just stopped this, life would be so less stressful. I have my Sunday mornings off. I wouldn't have to move Pam. I wouldn't have to do this. Lord, encourage us. All those that are having doubts, all those that are wanting to quit, all those that are wanting to give up, all those that don't see a way out, all those that have messed up, all those that are in a hole, all those that are in a pit, all those that are stuck in a mire. Lord, help us out of that place that we're at that we don't need to be. And put it in our hearts that we're to focus on eternity. We're to focus on eternity. And work towards that end. And to serve you and to follow you. So, Father, I ask you to help us do that. Bless these people that came to hear your word today. Bless them by encouraging them. I thank you for everything you've done. And I praise you in the name of your Son, Jesus. And all God's children said,